Hello everyone, my name is John Michael Bushman and welcome back to Magic the Gathering. The latest set, Duskmourn, finally has all of its cards revealed, and I haven't actually seen all of these, especially the ones for the Pauper format, and it's going to be quite the surprise, at least for some of them. I've already seen some of them, and already I can hear murmurs that Duskmourn is going to give quite the shake-up for the Pauper format, because there are a lot of cards that are, shall we say, a little high on the power level. Well, theoretical power level. People haven't exactly played with the cards yet, and we're still like adjusting. Well, I'm pretty sure the format has settled into the into the post Modern Horizons 3 additions now, and now we're here facing Duskmourn, and the horror themed set is going to be quite the blast, as if word is to be believed. So without further ado, let us check out what these 96 comments are going to do to the Pauper format. And of course, per usual, how wrong will I be when it comes to assessing these cards for a format that doesn't exactly have rotation? Starting with Acrobatic Cheerleader with the survival keyword. This is the new mechanic that is going to come out of Duskmourn alongside the next card here, Eerie. But we'll get to that when we get to that. More often than not, the survival mechanic, basically, if they survive main phase 1 through the battle phase and then main phase 2, basically the reprieve that most horror movie protagonists get whenever they escape the main monster. I guess it's it's appropriate, but she gains a flying counter if she even survives. So she must avoid the removal and then must also survive all the way until main phase 2. Of course, if you even like tap her to declare her as an attacker, like that's the absolute floor for Acrobatic Cheerleader. But if you're just going to use her for that, and you're not gonna use her for like tap mechanic shenanigans, then I don't think she's that good. And just giving her flying as a just giving Grizzly Bear flying is surprisingly not enough for the for this constructed format, and 2 toughness dies to a lot of stuff, unfortunately, and the format is already like riddled with a lot of stuff that kills anything and everything below 3 toughness. So that probably more for the draft environment. Up next, we have Cult Healer, a 3-mana 3/3 with Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, this guy gains lifelink until end of turn. A bit much for the constructed formats, but it is support for the rooms, as you guys can sort of see here. It's support for the rooms that are scattered at various rarities for the draft format, so he's definitely going to be in the deck as support for that, but otherwise for actual constructed, probably no. Up next, we have Emerge from the Cocoon. I'm pretty sure this is a Rita Repulsa meme somewhere in the works. And if you know what I'm referring to, then it's time to take your meds, old man. So 5 mana, return target creature card from graveyard to the battlefield, you gain 3 life. So this is basically a functional reprint of Resurrection, or a resurrection style spell. I blanked on it at first, and then I remembered it as I was talking here. It's a Breath of Life for 1 more mana for some weird reason. I guess tacking on 1 more mana just to make you gain 3 more life is worth 1 generic mana more. I don't think so, because the going rate for Breath of Life is 4 mana, and a lot of reanimation style decks in Pauper have basically all evolved, quote unquote, into combo decks now. Basically, the entire reanimation deck died as soon as Cast Down was downshifted to common. It's simply not worth it anymore, unless, of course, you treat your reanimation deck like a combo deck, but I highly doubt you will reach the mana necessary to cast stuff like Emerge from the Cocoon, or hell, even Breath of Life for that matter. Most of the reanimation decks that I do see survive somehow to this day are either just straight up Rakdos or straight up Mono Black, and then they just have Simian Spirit Guides in order to not just Simian Spirit Guides, but also Lotus Petals in order to basically turbo out their stuff. So yeah, for if reanimator decks are viable in Pauper, then Emerge from the Cocoon would see play. But unfortunately, as long as Cast Down is in the format and other effects like it, I don't see this having a future. Next, we have Fear of Immobility. This is part of a cycle, I believe, of fears that are in the set. I believe they're at all rarities, but I have to double check the uncommons for that. I do know that there are a bunch of rares that are also fears, and what this guy does. And there's also like a surprising amount of enchantment support in this set. I don't know why they would do that. I guess it's a nod to the fact that Aminatu is in this realm for some reason. Then again, there is this like persistent rumor that Aminatu is God, as in the Christian God, the Yahweh, the one above all, and whatnot. And she's here somehow facing off against Valgavoth, which is the Lucifer analog, so to speak. But don't take my word for it; those are just hearsay that I just see on the grapevine every once in a while. But going back to Fear of Immobility, if it enters, tap up to one other target creature. If an opponent controls that creature, put a stun counter on it. 5 mana for that effect. You could do that on blue cards for far less, unfortunately. Probably a curve filler for draft, but I mean, 5 mana 4/4 is something, but probably no. Up next, we have Fear of Surveillance, and that is horrifying art. And I guess that's about right because this is a horror themed set. Anyway, this is a horror themed set, so you might as well lean into a lot of the phobias. So, Fear of Surveillance, a 2 mana 2/2 enchantment creature. When it attacks, surveil 1, and it has vigilance. So, ooh, that is surprisingly flavor appropriate. And good God, the more I look at the art, the more horrifying it actually is. And take note, apart from the dozens of eyes that surround the creature in the center, there's actually an even bigger creature, or at least what seems like a bigger creature in the back. So, ooh, I don't want to look at the art any further. But as for the effect of the creature, it's definitely more. I definitely see this more in Abzan commander decks, as ways to fill up the graveyard. I mean, it's vigilant, so it doesn't necessarily need to it doesn't necessarily need to be held back for a block, since it just stands there vigilant anyway. And surprisingly appropriate because, surveillance and whatnot. So keep an eye out for this one for the budget minded commander decks, but for actual constructed, probably no. Up next, we have the Friendly Ghost, 4 mana 2/4. And speaking of, there will actually be a secret lair that's surprisingly appropriate, the Ghostbusters, for secret lair. And it will be featuring a bunch of cards that will be printed with Ghostbusters art on it. And one of the cards that a lot of people are going to be looking out for, and I'll put it up on screen when I can, editing me, just do this little bit of work, will be Careful Study. And this is a card that has never seen a reprint since the OG. And it did have a reprint, but it's for Tempest Remastered, and that's a Magic Online exclusive thing, so that's a topic in and of itself. But going back to Friendly Ghost, if it enters, target creature gets +2/+4 until end of turn. Why? I mean, it's a Friendly Ghost after all, but still, good God, you could do so much better than this. Let's just move on to the room, as in the first room in the common slot. Grand entryway, and /elegant rotunda. So the rooms function, it's literally written here, reminder text, like just below the card type. You may cast either half, and then in order to unlock the other one, you have to pay the other cost. So you can only just use either card. So the amount of value that a lot of these rooms have are honestly really good. But I'm actually curious as to what the rules are when you blink stuff like this. So does it enter as the room that you just paid to unlock? And then if you blink it, it will just be the room that you unlocked, and then not both rooms will be unlocked. So I'll have to look up on the rulings of that one. But otherwise, the grand entryway, if you unlock that door, you create a Glimmer token. And then if you unlock the Elegant Rotunda, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. So you may even just choose not to put any counters. 2 mana to make a 1/1. I mean, that's surprisingly bad because 2 mana in white to make creatures. The going rate is actually 2 mana for 2 creatures. So it's basically two. It's basically a 2/2 spread across 2 bodies, and to only get a mere 1/1 for 2 mana, that's for me at least. That's pretty bad. But Elegant Rotunda to put a +1/+1 counter on 2 target creatures, so you can potentially make that 1/1 into a 3/3. I still don't like it. And the card as a whole, I mean, again, it could probably be better, especially if you can blink stuff like this. And then you unlock both rooms at once without having to pay for the mana cost of the other. That would definitely make it a lot better for me, but otherwise, probably pass on this one. Up next, we have Hardened Escort. Whenever it attacks another target creature control, gets +1/+0 and indestructible until end of turn. It's all magic. I read the writing on the house's walls. I listened to its sights. I smell the changes in its air. It tells me where the danger lies. And I'm just noticing now she has a gun on the other side. Oh, yeah, she knows her stuff, so I guess it's appropriate that she says what she says. But 3 mana for 2/4, she blocks pretty well, and if she attacks, another creature gets slightly bigger and avoids destruction. I can definitely see this C play somewhere, but will probably not too widespread. So who knows where the Hardened Escort is gonna go? I mean, it is a human soldier, so there could be a soldier deck somewhere that will love to have this card, but otherwise, probably not for constructed. Maybe for commander, somebody will play this card because having her and then one other creature just attack in and be indestructible. That definitely sounds cool, but otherwise, probably not for competitive 1v1. Up next, we have Jump Scare. 1 mana instant and obligatory combat trick. Target creature gets +2/+2 flying and becomes a horror enchantment creature in addition to its other types. Appropriate flavor text. Boo. Just I mean, yeah, it does say it's a jump scare. So what else is it gonna say? I mean, yeah. What else are you expecting? +2/+2 and flying. Sure, another one of those target creature and then creatures that have prowess or creatures that spread around, like say Zada. It's obligatory mono white combat trick. So yeah, I mean it's okay, but you would rather honestly have trample or double strike for those kinds of effects, or hell, even indestructible. If because most creatures already can fly. At least the decks that use battle tricks like this, they can already fly somehow, or at least avoid a lot of the blockers. So it's something. And now that I think about it, sometimes becoming an enchantment can be a detriment. Because that just makes you live for forms of removal that get rid of enchantments. So be careful with the jump scare. Up next, we have Living Phone, a 3 mana 2/1. When it dies, look at the top 5 cards of your library. That is surprisingly deep. You may reveal a creature card with power 2 or less from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom. So if it dies, which is not going to be a problem, hello Grixis Affinity. Or you can even go Esper if you want. I mean, if you're crazy like that, I mean, I would try it if I were me. You would do that, and then you reveal a creature card with power 2 or less. Note that it says power 2 or less, so it doesn't check for mana value. You could have a 7 mana 2/2 for all this card cares. All it needs to see is its power. And then it's a filter. What the hell? It's an artifact filtering tool. Why would you do this, Watsy? Oh my god, this card. I do believe that Jeskai Affinity is also a thing, so that is I'm just so sick and tired of affinity decks in Pauper. Good god, I just want them gone. But it's a pillar of the format, so I guess it stays. We'll just move on to the next one. Up next, we have Possessed Goat, a 1 mana 1/1, and then for 3 mana, discard a card, put 3+1/+1 counters on it, and becomes a black demon, in addition to its other types and colors. So it becomes a black-white 4/4. Activate only once. Ooh. So it becomes a mana sink if you have nothing else to do with your mana, but otherwise, it's this is something. Could be a thing, a mana sink that you can do when you're in your deck and then you literally have nothing else to do. So this could be there in the deck. as a way to, finish stuff off, especially if you have nothing else to do. So keep it in mind for draft, but for constructed, probably no. Up next, we have Seize from Slumber, a 5-mana instant, but it costs 3 less to cast if it targets a tapped creature. Obligatory mono white, destroy a creature combat shenanigans. Yeah. Tyson tried to scream for help, but his lungs simply unraveled. I have no mouth, but I must scream. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what this is referencing. But for constructed, probably no. Up next, we have Shepherding Spirits. I almost say Shepherding. I don't know why I say it like that. Shepherding Spirits, a 6-mana 4/5. You'd better do something. It has flying and plane cycling. It's pretty hard to power creep the Lord of the Rings creatures where they would cycle for their respective land type for only 1 mana. And then they're trying to course correct here by having everything else cycle for 2. You just can't. You just can't. They are far. Those creatures from Lord of the Rings are just far, far too efficient, and we just can't anymore. We just can't. All right, we just cannot. Okay, this way, Melinda. 100 years haven't improved your sense of direction. And they're looking at the camera, so that means whoever is the person in this point of view, they're dead. They're not dead yet, but they are just gonna die, so good luck with that. Up next, we have Trapped in the Screen, a 3-mana enchantment with Ward 2. I don't know why, but I guess we'll find out when we read the rest of the card. When it enters, exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment on opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. So, an Oblivion Ring that cannot be removed easily is freaking amazing. And it targets an enchantment, a creature, or an artifact. Good God, that is amazing. And with Ward 2, is it just me or has Oblivion Ring been power crept? Or Oblivion Ring style effects? Hell, even Banishing Light has been power crept. And those things are cards that I always say are always good. We just needs to see the right deck to use it, and hell, even for budget-minded commanders, this is something to always keep in mind. Those styles of effects, but Trapped in the Screen is just the best of the bunch now because you need to pay 2 extra mana for your removal spells now, or any ability for that matter that destroys enchantments. This is insane. Just keep an eye out for this for the future, because this just might see play somewhere. Up next, we have Unsettling Twins, and it's just not subtle anymore. They couldn't have put any other flavor text on this card, and they put in the one that is extremely obvious. Come play with us. Really, Watsy? You couldn't put any other kind of flavor text for the twins, and if I remember correctly, that in that famous scene, it was just an empty hallway. I believe there was no furniture there. Editing me, just look it up. That horror scene with the twins, I know it was just an empty hallway, and then it was just the 2 of them right down at the end. There was no furniture there. It was just a big empty hallway. But Manifest Dread, another new mechanic for this set. It's basically slightly better manifest. Because it always looks at 2 cards rather than just the 1. It's something 4 mana for a 2/2. If that's all it does, then the floor is pretty goddamn low, or rather the ceiling is pretty goddamn low. But I guess, flickering shenanigans will allow you to filter through your deck using stuff like this. So it's something, but otherwise, probably no. Up next, we have Clammy Prowler, a 4-mana 2/5. Ooh, you'd better do something here. Whenever it attacks another target attacking creature, can't be blocked this turn. So it's a way to get your attackers through for draft. And being a 2/5, I mean, it can get through a lot of stuff pretty goddamn well. So keep this in mind more for draft. If anything else, because this deck is definitely going to go in certain archetypes, certain mixes of certain builds of archetypes for draft format, but for actual constructed, probably no. Up next, we have Creeping Peeper, a 2-mana 2/1 that adds blue. Ooh, so obligatory blue mana dork. But what can we use the mana for? Enchantments, unlock a door, or turn a permanent face up. So this is definitely support for the draft archetypes that this set has, and it's uncommon. So there's always a chance that you will highly likely pull stuff like this. But be on your guard. Valgavoth has eyes everywhere, and I don't mean that figuratively. Yes, it's an extremely literal sense because these creeping peepers are freaking everywhere. But I don't want to stare at this any longer. Let's move on to the next one. Up next, we have Daggermaw Megalodon, a 6 mana 5/7 with Vigilance, and it has island cycling. Again, stuff like this, you would rather just toss to the graveyard for one measly mana and then bring him back using reanimation spells. The Lord of the Ring creatures can already do that at a far more efficient manner. Although there is a shark from Core Set 2021 that I personally loved in my reanimator decks because it has hexproof, so it's definitely a big fuck you to Cast Down and company, but the game has gotten the format rather has gotten so fast to the point that that guy isn't just simply not enough anymore. Let's move on to the next one. Next, we have Don't Make a Sound. Okay, a counter spell. And unless they pay 2, and if they do, you will surveil 2. Wait, who will surveil 2? You? Oh, okay. So they have to surveil 2 in order to, yeah, it's referencing you, as in you, the person who cast the spell. But if they pay the 2, you will surveil 2. Ooh, I mean, don't make a sound after all. So Jace kept his mouth shut, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the strange creatures could hear the screaming in his mind. Yeah, this is honestly, this art is surprisingly unsettling. I don't know why. It's probably just the lighting that's making it a lot more frightening than it already is. But let's just move on to the next one before it horrifies me. Up next, we have Enter the Enigma, a 1-mana sorcery. Target creature can be blocked this turn. Just draw a card. Yeah. I mean, the birthday card from Lord of the Rings does the same thing, but it makes you the ring better, and then it gives you bonuses based on the number of times that you've become tempted by the ring, and then it gives you additional benefits. So not being blocked, unfortunately, is just the floor, surprisingly, of being a ring better, because I believe you can't be blocked by creatures with power greater than yours. So, and then it eventually gains stuff that allow it to hit even harder. So it's something, but probably highly no. Up next, we have Erratic Apparition, a 3-mana 1/3 with Flying and Vigilance. What does Eerie do whenever an enchantment you control enters or whenever you fully unlock a room? This gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Flying Vigilance for a 1/3, a good blocker for draft, but otherwise, just no. For constructed, definitely no. Just skip on this one. Move on to the next one. Up next, we have Glimmer Burst, a 4-mana instant. Draw 2, create a glimmer. Glimmer. Ha ha. There are a lot of these kinds of effects lately. Instant speed draw 2s for blue, but at 4 mana. And they do an additional thing on top of drawing 2 cards. Is it worth tacking on one more generic mana in order to do what the card is doing? No, just no. Let's move on to the next one. Up next, we have Meat Locker and Drowned Diner. The Meat Locker, when you unlock it, tap up to 1 target creature and we put 2 stun counters on it, appropriate since you're stuffing them into a freezer. And then Drowned Diner, when you unlock this door, draw 3, discard a card. 5 mana for that effect. On an enchantment. Probably no. This seems just a little too slow for what it does, and hell, even just putting 2 stun counters, sure, this is definitely more for draft than anything else. Unless somebody finds a way to break this, probably no, sadly. Up next, we have Piranha Fly, a 2-mana 2/1. I mean, it is flying, or the creature's name could be Piranha, and then this is just a command: Piranha Fly. You know, that kind of stuff. 2-mana 2/1 flying, but it enters tapped. Why? Because it's a fish at first, and then you have to give it a command to fly. So I guess my analogy may be correct. 2-mana 2/1 to fly. There are a lot of other creatures that can already fly at that same mana cost. Pass on this one. Up next, we have Stalked Researcher, a 2-mana 3/3 with Defender. With Eerie, what does it do? Whenever an enchantment you control or whenever you fully unlock a room, it can attack this turn as though it didn't have Defender. It's just a shadow. It's only a shadow. Please just let it be a shadow. Oh my god. It's that kind of character in the horror movie group. All right, cool, cool, cool. But otherwise, probably no. Sadly. Up next, we have Tunnel Surveyor, a 3 mana 2/2. When it enters, create a Glimmer token. No ish. I mean, you can blink this multiple times in order to create even more Glimmer tokens. But otherwise, I don't have high hopes for this one, unfortunately. I mean, it's a 3/3 across two bodies. One is a 2/2, the other is a 1/1. But otherwise, probably no, sadly. Up next, we have Twist Reality, a 3 mana. Basically, it's either a 3 mana counterspell or a 3 mana Manifest Dread. So, 3 mana, look at the top two cards of your library, put one face down, and then the other to your graveyard. This is surprisingly good, and I've seen murmurings that this card could see play in Pauper, but 3 mana is a bit much for Pauper because a lot of stuff is only like 1 or 2 mana at the most. And then the only time that you reach 3 and above is if you're in green. But so this could, I mean, it's a budget card because it is not common after all. It could see play in Commanders somewhere, but otherwise probably. I mean, I'm 50-50 on it, but at the very least, keep an eye out for this one. Up next, we have Unable to Scream. So I guess the card earlier is not the reference to I have no mouth, but I must scream. This is probably it, but it becomes a toy. It's basically an enchantment aura where the creature loses all abilities and becomes a toy in addition to its other types. And then if it's face down, if the creature is face down, it can't be turned face up. This is insane for one measly mana. For one measly mana, you basically blank an entire creature. Like that's insane. I believe there was an enchantment aura that did the same thing back in MH3, but it was for 2 mana. And 1 mana is like the cheapest we've ever gotten yet. And hell, there are even like green and white enchantments that do essentially the same thing, where it turns the targeted creature into basically a vanilla. And those cards see play everywhere as forms of non-traditional removal, especially if they want to remove the commander on board. So the blue players should definitely keep this in mind. Otherwise, for constructed, probably no, sadly. Up next, we have another room in blue. We have Underwater Tunnel / Slimy Aquarium. Underwater Tunnel for 1 measly mana, you surveil 2. Okay, that's pretty powerful, but what does the aquarium do? When you unlock this door, manifest dread, then put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. So it becomes a 3/3. This is surprisingly on rate. The rate of this card is insane. So you drop this for 1 mana, you surveil 2, and then later on in the game, when you have the mana to do so, you just manifest dread, and then you put a +1/+1 counter on the card that you manifested, and then you've probably been fixing your draws at that point to ensure that the card that you manifest dread from is a creature that you can actually use, and that is insane. Definitely keep an eye out for this one. 4 mana might be a bit too much, but the 1 mana side will definitely see play somewhere. I'm just not sure where yet. Up next, we have Vanish from Sight, a 4 mana instant where you put the card on top of bottom or library, and then you surveil 1. There was another effect like this. It was either in MH3 or in the set previous that. I believe it was Murders at Karlov. No. It was probably at Bloomborough. It was one of those two. But otherwise, 4 mana for these types of effects. I mean, it's likely more for draft than anything else. And I mean, the surveil one is spicy cherry on top, but otherwise, probably no. Up next, we have Appendage Amalgam. This is horrifying to look at. Oh, dear God. 3 mana, 3/2 with Flash. Ooh, it has Flash. Great. So it's basically like a jump scare monster. Whenever it attacks, surveil 1. I mean, yeah, 3 mana, 3/2 with Flash. So you can flash this in at the end of your opponent's turn, and then it just starts attacking and starts surveilling for you. And it's a horror. So I remember there was this like super popular Demir horror commander, and I mean it was ultimately power crept by Captain Nagarthod, I believe his name is how you pronounce it. I mean everyone just calls him Davy Jones because he's an illithid pirate. So there's that. But Umbris, there we go. I think his name was Umbris, and he's also a horror commander, but he's now in the 99 of Captain Nagarthod. But this could go in there as a way to put stuff into the graveyard. But otherwise, for constructed, probably no. Up next, we have Bilmerk Leech. Whenever enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, each opponent loses 1 life. So there were murmurs about this card seeing play in Pauper because it's a grizzly bear, but you'd have to be extremely enchantment centric in order to fully pull this off. But given the quality of enchantments that I'm seeing for Pauper, I mean just in this set alone, I mean as you can see here, just a couple of cards ago, Underwater Tunnel, you can use that to basically better support Bilmerk Leech. And then you also have non-traditional removal with Unable to Scream. So you can do it. You can do it. I'm just not sure how viable it actually is. We're just going to have to wait and see if Bilmerk Leech even makes it that far. Keep an eye out for this one. Up next, we have Cackling Slasher, a 4-mana 3/3 with Death Touch, and then it enters with a +1/+1 counter if a creature died this turn. So definitely a main phase 2 thing, more for draft, if anything else, unfortunately. But it has Death Touch, so it's going to be very, very hard to either block this or go through it if the opponent leaves this behind as a blocker, because it will literally kill anything it touches. And drafts are drafts are going to be very annoying that way. Up next, we have Cracked Skull. Enchanted Aura. When it enters, look at target player's hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. The player discards that card. And when the enchanted creature is dealt damage, you destroy it. So if something gets pinged and the creature has Cracked Skull on it, they're just destroyed instead. So it's pseudo Death Touch. I believe there are a bunch of pingers in this set, if I remember correctly. So that will enable this in that draft archetype. But in Pauper, probably no, sadly. Up next, our Black Room, a Derelict Attic or Widow's Walk. What does the Attic do? You draw 2 cards, you lose 2 life. Yep, that's the going rate for black draw 2s in any rarity for that matter, so pretty good. But what does the 4-mana one do? Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, gets +1/+0 and gets Death Touch. Hey, that's actually pretty goddamn good. A bit much at 4 mana. The 3-mana one, it's something, but otherwise this room is probably a little too slow for the Pauper format, sadly. But we'll wait and see, solely because of Bilmerk Leech here. But so keep an eye out for really good common enchantments moving forward, because they might see play just because of Bilmerk Leech. But otherwise, for this card in particular, draw 2, lose 2. I mean, again, going rate for black draw spells these days. Up next, we have Fanatic of the Harrowing, a 4-mana 2/2. When it enters, each player discards card. If you discarded a card this way, you draw a card. I'm going to tell you guys right now, just no. Just no. Let's just move on to the next one. Up next, we have Fear of Lost Teeth, a 1-mana 1/1. When it dies, deal 1 damage to any target and you gain 1 life. A lot of people have said that this card is basically the replacement for Footlight Fiend. And it's surprisingly good too. 1-mana 1/1. You're happy if it lives, and you're also happy if it dies, because it gains you back the life that you potentially already lost. And you have ways to get this guy back as well. So it's something. And art, again, it's a horror theme set, so a lot of the art is going to be really, really phobia inducing. So oh boy, this thing is, the art on Fear of Lost Teeth is insane. And then of course Fear of Dark. I mean, are you afraid of the dark? Yeah, blah blah blah. And it even has a candle wick in the middle of its body. Oh, that's ugly. 5 mana. When it attacks, if the defending player controls no Glimmer creatures, it gains Menace and Death Touch. Definitely more for draft. Just skip on this one. Let's move on to the next card. Up next, we have Final Vengeance. I don't even need to read this card, and I will tell you guys right now, this card is good. This card is fucking wild. It's so fucking good. Exiling a creature. Yes, it's at sorcery speed, but Cast Down and Co. are not enough for you. Final, and you have to add Final Vengeance as well. Like, really? Really, Watsy? Really? Just really? I mean, you can skip Give Into Violence because, good God, Final Vengeance is an insane removal spell. Sacrificing a creature in black, really? In the colors that love to sacrifice a lot of creatures? This nothing. That's nothing. And then just exile a creature for 1 measly mana. Really? Really, Watsy, you're really you just found a way to nearly power creep Cast Down already, and it's in colors that already can already like sacrifice a lot of their own stuff. Just let's just move on to the next row. Up next we have Innocuous Rat, and then when it dies, Manifest Dread. See, I mean, Mono Black Control keeps getting a lot. Just keeps getting toys. Just keeps getting toys. You can never not give Mono Black Control toys. And then card next to it, Murder. I mean, obvious. Come on, you would have a horror scene, a horror slash slasher themed set, and then not have slasher tropes in it. Come on, Murder had to be in there. It just had to be. More than any other card this set has had so far, Murder simply had to be in the set. Up next, we have Resurrected Cultist, a 3-mana 4/1 with Delirium. And then, if you have 4 more card types in your graveyard, what can you do? You return it to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So, you can't exactly abuse this guy, but, you know, there are other ways to bring creatures back. It's a 4/1, so it's aggressively statted, but it dies really easily. Otherwise, probably more for draft, unfortunately. Up next, we have Spectral Slasher. Not Slasher, it's Snatcher. A 6-mana 6/5 with Ward. You have to the person targeting it will have to discard a card, and then it cycles. Hey, Ward is not nothing, but discard a card. There are a lot of cards that are fine being in the graveyard anyway. And this thing doesn't exactly have removal, doesn't exactly have evasion, so people can block it for days, and then probably just it's a nothing burger, as the kids say these days. Unfortunately, just skip on this one. Up next, we have Winter's Intervention. It deals 2 damage to target creature, and you gain 2 life. Really, Mono Black Burn, getting a bit of toys. Can we trust him? Nico whispered as they eyed the stranger. I don't know, the wanderer replied, but he's a lot friendlier than the creature that was chasing us. Ooh. Oh my God, Winter. Oh God. Yeah. I think this is Winter right here, the guy that rescued Nico and the Wandering Emperor of Kamigawa. Oh yeah. There was a lot of bad vibes I get from that guy. But moving back to the card, just Reckless Burn finally has actual factual removal. Like, what the hell? I mean, rather damage-based removal, so there is that. It could go in some decks. The life gain could potentially matter, especially against Mono Red in particular. I mean, there are 2 flavors of Mono Red running around in Pauper right now, so this could see play somewhere. Keep an eye out for this one moving forward. Up next, we have Bedhead Bestie. Yeah, I will call him Bedhead Bestie. Totally not deflecting or whatever. Then again, I'm bald, so there's that. But Mountain Cycling with Menace, so it's a good attacker. Definitely slightly better than the Oliphant, because the Oliphant only has Trample and gives creatures +2/+0. But otherwise, Bedhead Beastie might be a small replacement. But again, Oliphant cycles for 1 mana. The Beastie cycles for 2. So do the math on that one. Next, we have Boiler Bilge's Ripper. 5 mana 4/4. When it enters, you may sacrifice another target permanent, or rather, another target creature or enchantment. Why did I read it as permanent? But otherwise, yeah, when you do that, it deals 2 damage to any target. Go ahead, meat. Run. Yeah, a Human Assassin, and then you have a backdrop like that. That's actually a goddamn good shot. Kai Carpenter, you have my seal of approval when it comes to art in Magic the Gathering. But otherwise, 5 mana for a 4/4 that just deals a measly 2 damage. Sadly, a little too under there. So let's move on to the next one. Up next, we have Clockwork not Repercussionist. What the fuck? Clockwork Percussionist, a 1 mana 1/1 with haste, and when it dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. What in the actual fuck? Why are you giving mono red even more fucking toys? Stop doing that, Watsy. It's a goddamn good card. Why would you not play this as a 4 of? Just let's move on to the next one before I pop a blood vessel. Up next, we have a Room in Red, Glassworks, and Shattered Yard. What does Glassworks do? It deals 4 damage to target creature and opponent controls. Okay, 4 mana for that effect. Rather, 3 mana for that effect. Probably no, but let's see what Shattered Yard does. At the beginning of your end step, this deals 1 damage to each opponent. So it's a burn card. Probably not for Pauper, sadly. More for draft, definitely, but I don't think this will see play anywhere other than draft, unfortunately. The costs are a bit too high. But I mean, budget-minded commanders are always looking for stuff like, especially with burn style effects these days. Hell, budget Torbran will definitely love to have this card. Although 5 mana might be a bit too much. Because that deck would prefer to have stuff below 4 mana anyway, so that you can maximize the amount of damage that all of the stuff that in the deck can deal. So probably no, sadly. Up next, we have Grab the Prize, a 2 mana sorcery. As an addition cost to cast a spell, discard a card, and then draw 2 cards. And then, if the discarded card wasn't a land card, this deals 2 damage to each opponent. This is an insane card, and I don't know why you wouldn't play 4 of it. I would play 6 if I could, but sadly, the rules of the game deny me from doing so. This is an insane card. Why would you not play this at 4, especially if you're mono red? So that you can continuously reduce their life total down to 0. Let's move on to the next one before, again, I might pop another fucking blood vessel if we keep reading this card and the implications that it has for the Pauper format. Up next, we have the Hand That Feeds. I mean, there's no the, but it's just a hand that feeds. A 2 mana 2/2 with Delirium. If it attacks while there are 4 more card types in graveyard, it gets +2/+0 and gains menace. Yeah, I mean, it would gain menace, alright? Because, good God, that is horrifying. You would not want to stand in the way of this fucking hand. So, let's move on to the next one before before this settles into my nightmares. Up next, we have Impossible Inferno, a 5 mana instant where it deals 6 damage to target creature. Why are these things becoming more and more prevalent these days? 5 mana deal 6 to something, and then if there are 4 more card types in your graveyard, it basically replaces itself, but you need to have Delirium, which is, by the way, I never mentioned it, is a returning mechanic to this set. I mean, surprisingly appropriate given the themes of this set. But Impossible Inferno, definitely a curve filler for draft, but otherwise will likely not see play anywhere. Up next, we have Most Valuable Slayer, a 4 mana 2/4. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. Terrain had never lost a match in his life, and he didn't plan to start now. Oh dear God, he died, didn't he? He definitely died. This art right here, quite literally screams to me, moments taken before disaster. Yep, Terrain died. I can feel it like right freaking now. Let's move on to the next one. Up next, we have Ragged Playmate, a 2 mana 2/2 with a tap ability. Target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. Likely just curve filler for the draft format, but otherwise probably no. There are ways that you can just push with damage in red. In fact, there are so many ways to push damage in red these days that why would you want stuff like this? Just pass on this one. I mean, if only for the if there were a horror movie trope checklist, a horrifying doll would definitely be up there in the list. So it's something. I mean, there's a quota to fill, so there is that. But otherwise, for playability's sake, highly likely no. Up next, we have Rampaging Soul Rager, a 3 mana 1/4, where it gets +3/+0 as long as 2 or more oh my God, I tripped up on that so hard. As long as there are 2 or more unlocked doors among rooms you control. So basically, fully unlocking a room will make this guy into a 4/4, but for the mana investment, probably a little too slow, unfortunately. But it does block well, so there is that. So keep that in mind. But otherwise, if you need that much setup for something like this, then it's highly likely a skippable effect. Up next, we have Rip Chain Razorkin. Well, I almost tripped up on that one. Good God. 4 mana, 5/3. Good God, those are stats with reach. And then for 2 in a red, sacrifice a land, draw a card. There are better effects than this. Sprouting Goblin that came out way back in Dominaria United. That's far more efficient than this, unfortunately. Although that one requires the Goblin to tap, and then this one doesn't. So just have a mana sink and then just get all of that mana into this thing. But you have to sack your lands in the process just to replace them with cards. More for budget-minded commander players, but unfortunately, you have to pass on this one. Up next, we have Scorching Dragonfire. Hey, that's a reprint that I am very, very happy to see. Without even reading the rest of the text, this is a reprint that that will definitely see plain standard. Not like before even going into Pauper, this will see plain standard. I'm telling you guys right now, the exile it instead clause of it is freaking insane. This will see play somewhere in standard. I can almost 100% guarantee that. But otherwise, if there are far more efficient cards than this, then I'm more than happy to be corrected on that one. Let's move on to the next one. Up next, another Red Room, Ticket Booth, and Tunnel of Hate. That is, I do not want to be on this ride then, if that's going to be the name of the ride. For 3 mana, you unlock the door, and then you manifest Dread. So look at the top 2, and then you put one face down on the field as a 2/2, or you put the other in the graveyard. Let's see what the Tunnel of Hate does. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gains double strike until end of turn. 6 mana for that effect is too much. I'm telling you guys right now, 6 mana is way, way too much when you can get the same effect for just 2 and below. And then Ticket Booth probably will be the reason this card sees play, but you'll only really play for the other half. I guess Tunnel of Hate is a mana sink as a way to finish the opponent off in draft, but otherwise, skip on this one. Up next, we have Turn Inside Out. Oh god, that guy's dead, isn't he? He's most likely dead. Target creature gets +3/+0, and then when it dies, you manifest Dread. Scared, are you? Need a hug? No, just no. I'm not gonna stare at this anymore than I already will. Up next, we have Vicious Clown. So already, we are checking our tropes for horrifying things that you see in a horror movie, and Scary Clowns is definitely one of them. A 3 mana 2/3, which is a human clown, although I think he appears to be a lot shorter than that. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters, this guy gets +2/+0 until end of turn, so that's something. So just build your deck with a lot of small creatures, and then this guy just busts in. Oh my god, that's something more for the draft environment, yes. But for actual Pauper, there are stuff that are way, way more efficient than this guy, unfortunately. And you need to be in a creature-dense deck anyway, but in mono red, where you have to balance out not just creatures, but also other stuff as well. So this guy will probably only be draft fodder, unfortunately. Up next to the green cards now, we have Anthropede, a 4 mana 3/4 with reach. When it enters, you may discard a card or pay 2. And if you do, destroy target room. Support for the archetype that this is so goddamn specific. I'm not even gonna go into that first train of thought, but now that I think about it, this is so goddamn specific. I am pretty sure this will not see play anywhere outside of the draft outside of draft. It's so freaking specific. I just can't. You just can't. Okay? You just can't. Okay? Just let's move on to the next one. Next, we have Bashful Beastie, a 5 mana 5/4. When it dies, manifest Dread. No one knows what hides beneath the Beastie's masks. I think I'd rather not know as well. There are also eyes on the plants, so that is horrifying as well. Oh dear god. Let's move on to the next one. Up next, we have Cautious Survivor, a 4 mana 4/4 at the beginning of your second main phase. If this is tapped, you gain 2 life. Alright, cool. Definitely more for the grindy matchups in draft, which a lot of draft games usually are. But otherwise, I mean, it's on rate, 4 mana 4/4. Yeah, it blocks well, it attacks well as well. But otherwise, probably just for draft, not so much for actual constructed. Up next, we have Cryptid Inspector, a 3 mana 2/3 with vigilance. Whenever a face down permanent you control enters, and whenever Cryptid Inspector or another permanent you control is turned face up, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it triggers itself. That's interesting. Oh, please be dead, please be dead, please be dead, please be dead. The flavor text is insane. Oh my god. Oh my god. They should, if they were gonna do that kind of flavor text, then they would have just done it as like one whole sentence. There are no spaces. But 3 mana for a 2/3 with its effect. It could potentially get bigger and become a 3/4. I mean, I'm talking about the floor here. The ceiling could be like, it could eventually become a 6/7 or a 7/8. But otherwise, probably not for constructed, sadly. Up next, we have Flesh Burrower, a 2 mana 2/2 with Death Touch, and whenever it attacks another target creature you control, gains Death Touch until end of turn. This image is so fucking horrifying. Good God! And in gaining Death Touch, which is, now that I think about it, using a centipede to make something gain Death Touch is surprisingly appropriate. And let me explain why. Because there is this legend in China where I'm not quite sure how real its basis is in history, but it's a legend where it goes, you take 100 centipedes, then you put them all in a jar and you seal it. Eventually, those 100 centipedes are going to starve, and then the last centipede standing is apparently will have poison so potent that it can kill a man within a couple of seconds. And they use that last survivor, because it will eventually have killed everyone else, as a way to poison someone. And using a centipede for this art in specific is insane. And let's read the flavor text. Symptoms of a burrower bite include fevers, chills, gangrene, subcutaneous writhing, a growing urge to eat the flesh of the living, and if you're lucky, death. I'd rather die than experience everything else that is described here, unfortunately. Let's move on to the next one. Up next, we have Frantic Strength, a 3-mana flash enchantment aura, where enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and will have trample. With his friends dead and his weapons broken, Taros sees the only thing he could to defend himself. A lamp. He died, didn't he? Yep. He very likely died. Yep. Rip Taros. Move on to the next one. Oh, and this could see play as a combat trick somewhere in Commander, but otherwise for actual constructed, probably no, sadly. Rancor exists, so keep that in mind. Next, we have Grasping Longneck, a 3-mana 4/2 with reach. I wouldn't be... Wow, now that I think about it, I haven't seen a creature yet that has won the award of this creature has reach. But this guy, I mean, it's appropriate that he has reach. He has a long neck. Of course, he would be able to reach you. But when it dies, you gain 2 life. A 3-mana for that effect. And it's a 2 toughness. Probably no, sadly. Yeah, definitely no. Definitely no. Although, now that I think about it, and I'm actually surprised that I got this far into the Pauper set overview without even realizing it. Since there are a lot of enchantment creatures in this deck, Go Shintai is going to have far more targets than the shrines now. And that is a horrifying prospect, since you would want stuff in your graveyard anyway. So... Ooh... Yeah, if you just focus on the second line of text of Go Shintai, you can just keep reanimating basically enchantment creatures. That is... I'm going to have to work on building that 5-color enchantment deck that I've been putting in the back burner for so goddamn long. I'm going to have to look back at this set and see what kind of concoctions I can make. So... I'm going to surprise my friends with that one. Let's move on to the next one then. Up next, we have Horrid Vigor, a 2-mana instant where target creature gains Death Touch and indestructible until end of turn. I don't know why this isn't in black, but I think this is fine. Usually the black card is the black combat track is the one that gets this specific effect, but otherwise, probably no. Let's just keep moving on here. Up next, we have Manifest Dread. Yeah, I mean, literally a card named after the set mechanic, and it does what it does. So, and that's why you never travel without a flamethrower. Yeah, you never do. Yeah. Good card is surprisingly this is a good card. This is a draw 2. Yeah, 2-mana draw 2. That's actually fucking insane. now that I think about it, this is insane. 2 mana for essentially a draw 2. That is... Oh, wow. And you even get to put the other card in the graveyard. So, yeah, this is definitely a 2-mana draw 2. Holy shit. This is pretty goddamn good. Wow, definitely keep an eye out for this one. But I'm not quite sure where else this would see play. But good God, 2 mana draw two. Oh boy, let's move on to the next one. Up next, we have a green room finally, moldering gym, which is just every gym, and then the weight room. So let's see what the gym does. Search your library for a basic land card. You put it onto the battlefield and then you shuffle. Okay, battlefield tap, by the way. And then you have the weight room. When you unlock it, manifest dread. Then you put 3+1/+1 counter, 3+1/+1 counters on that creature. You're in green, so ramping up to 6 will definitely not be a problem. But in actual constructed, probably no, sadly. Because the moldering gem in particular, effects like that already exist in Pauper, and nobody really plays it unless it's a creature. Of course, well, unless it's a creature that says that's also an elf. Those are the only times that a 3 mana get a land matters, unfortunately. So this will probably see more play in for more budget-minded commanders. So otherwise, yeah, definitely pass on this one. Up next, we have Monstrous Emergence, a 2 mana sorcery. Without even reading the rest of the card, I will already tell you guys this card is good. Because this is basically a card that will turn the big creatures that you have in your hand into ammunition to remove your opponent's creatures. It's insane, and the damage will come from Monstrous Emergence. Now, it's basically a fight spell with extra steps, if you can believe that, because it turns your big creatures in hand into basically lightning bolts. I'm actually motivated to rebuild my John the Initiative deck again solely due to this card, and I wouldn't have it any other way because I loved that deck to bits, and I would love to get back into the groove of things with that deck again, because good God, again, that deck is so goddamn cool, and because it uses a mechanic that was definitely abused to the max on day one, and a lot of formats were ruined because of it. Well, just mainly Pauper and Legacy. In Pauper in particular, there were far more bans because there are a lot more cards. There are a lot more initiative cards at common than there are ones at rare. And the ones at rare, though, there's only one that was banned, and it was White Plume Adventurer. But because 3 mana on turn 1 is very easy in Legacy, but then in Pauper, you can essentially do the same thing. Oh my God. But yeah, this card's good. I'm telling you guys now, this card is really goddamn good. Let's move on to the next one. Up next, for 2 mana, you get to say its name. And then you basically do it thrice, and then you get Altanak thrice called, and then you put it onto the battlefield. Yeah. So as weird as it is to say, you should actually run 4 of this. Just so that you can just consistently hit it, because it's a mill 3. And then you return a land or creature from your graveyard to your hand. Yeah, I mean, apart from all of that, and it checks your whole graveyard as well. So you could mill 3 and then just pick the card that wasn't milled, that has already been sitting in the graveyard for the longest time. So yeah, this is basically a draw 1, and then you basically draw 1, surveil 2. So why wouldn't you do this? Although the ability to search Altanak is can only be activated as sorcery, but this is another damn good. This entire row except the Moldering Gym, these are all goddamn good cards. So let's just move on to the next row. Up next, we have Slavering Branch Snapper, a 6 mana 7/6 with okay, so this belongs to the same cycle as those other basic land cycling creatures, but it's pointing at a window. Hey, look, it made a nice big path through the hedge maze. Oh, okay. That's what it was doing. It wasn't pointing at the window in the background, but it was making its way through a hedge maze. And the flavor text is credited to Simone, who is in this plane somehow. Man, characters have been getting around a lot thanks to the Omen Pats. But otherwise, I believe the Lord of the Rings version of this, the one that photocycles, yeah, it's again a lot of the Lord of the Rings creatures that land cycle. You just simply cannot beat that rate. Unfortunately, 1 mana versus 2, that's big. As unfortunate as it sounds. Let's move on to the next one. Up next, we have Spine Seeker Centipede. That is already a horrifying sentence. 3 mana 2/1. When it enters, search your library for a basic land card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. And then, if you have Delirium, it gets +1/+2, and has Vigilance. Pretty goddamn on rate. All things considered, there's a player at the shop I work at that would love to have this card because all it needs to do is to enter the battlefield, and Zask, I believe, does that a lot, and he's gonna want this card. Oh boy, I'm gonna have to talk to him when we meet, when we meet each other again. So let's move on to the goodest boy here, the Wary Watchdog. A 2 mana 3/1. When it enters or dies, you surveil one. He is the goodest boy. And let's read the flavor text. Valgavoth harbors a special loathing for dogs. I don't even need to read the rest of the flavor text. Valgavoth is indeed the devil himself. If he hates dogs and no other sin, then Valgavoth needs to die. If he has something against all of these good boys and girls, I will personally punch him in the face for it. Okay, I don't and reading the rest of the flavor text now, whose mere presence provides a powerful antidote to the fear he craves. And see, they're even like morale boosters. Of course, they will be good boys and girls. What would you have against doggos? How dare you? I mean, this is me speaking, of course, with bias, because my parents have 2 dogs, so I know what it feels like to have dogs as a pet. Let's just move on to the next one. Surprisingly, right next to the Wary Watchdog, a bear trap. But it has flash, so for 4 mana you deal 3 damage to target creature. Just no, there are far more efficient ways to do this. You can do that for 3 mana, not 4, but it is an artifact, so there is that, and you can just do this as a bargaining chip as well, rather than just use it as a 4 mana trick. But otherwise, something to keep in mind for the budget minded, but otherwise probably no. Up next, we have Found Footage, a 1 mana artifact, and it's a clue as well. Oh, Jesus Christ, now I'm just realizing it now. Oh my god, this card is way better than I thought. Reading this card now, 2 mana, sacrifice it, surveil 2, and then you draw a card. Good god, the first sentence will very rarely not matter. I'm telling you guys right now, it will not matter. It's the second sentence that is fucking insane. You would want this in your artifact-based commander decks moving forward. Just for sure, you're going to want to have this, especially, and most of those artifact-based decks have ways to recycle their artifacts anyway, and this card should go in there no matter frickin' what. Just add this to your deck. I'm pretty sure there will be a Pauper deck somewhere that will take full advantage of this and recur into and out of the graveyard multiple times. So yeah, definitely hoard copies of this whenever you can, along with the other cards that I have high opinions of. Up next, we have Friendly Teddy, a 2 mana 2/2. When it dies, each player draws a card. Oh, it's so friendly. Why does it have 16 eyes? It's probably not a problem whatsoever. Yeah, let's move on to the next one before this gives me nightmares. Up next, we have Glimmerlight, a 2 mana artifact equipment. The only equipment I've seen so far. That's interesting. A lot of the others are auras. Oh, right, makes sense because this is an enchantment focused set after all. So yeah, there should be just only a small handful of equipment. They're probably at higher rarities now that I think about it. But this is the first equipment that common that I've seen, like, completely. I may have missed a couple, but this is the first equipment that I've seen. Holy shit. It creates a Glimmer token, and then equip creature gets +1/+1. So you can turn the Glimmer token into a 2/2 for 3 mana. You can turn a Glimmer token into a 2/2. So something, but otherwise probably no. Up next, we have Malevolent Chandelier. I don't know the song. I just know that I just know the part where she screams chandelier at the top of her lungs. But it's a 6 mana 4/4, and then for 2 mana, don't need to tap. Put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. Oh, the last sentence is what ruins it. Activate only as a sorcery. So yeah, at the very least, WotC knew what they were doing with this one in particular. Although, They could have not put that last line of text anyway, because 6 mana is already a lot to cast this thing. But I guess even then, with how frequent artifact recursion is, or rather with how prevalent artifact recursion is, no matter what format you're playing in, I can definitely see them tacking on the activate only as a sorcery, as a way to curtail this card's freaking power level. Oh boy. But we are nearing the end here, and we are here with the dual land cycle, where a friend of mine who is also a customer at the shop I work at, he mistakenly misread this as you just pay 13 life to make them enter untapped. Somehow, I don't know why you would do that. That would make these cards way too powerful. Especially at common, because they would be extremely expensive commons if it were just that way. And the other downside would be, they're unfetchable, but still, these lands, basically your opponent, or rather a player rather, has to have 13 or less life for them to come in untapped, and they're not searchable anyway, so that balances them out somewhat. And it's an okay cycle, especially in a format. I believe Bloomborough introduced a lot of aggressive cards into the format, and with there are a lot of aggressive decks in standard right now, so this cycle of lands could potentially see play there, because having color fixing is always good in standard. And in Pauper in specific, unfortunately, the artifact lands are king. Let's just accept it as fact. The artifact lands are king, especially the ones that came out of MH2, because solely for the reason that they are indestructible. There is no two ways about it. The indestructible artifact lands plus the OG artifact lands are king. There is no two ways about it, unfortunately. And yeah, I mean, Terramorphic Expanse getting a reprint, but yeah, apart from that, we are at the end of our Pauper set overview of Duskmourn. There are a lot of really good cards in this set, both for the budget-minded in Commander and for other competitive formats as well. Of course, rather for the Pauper format as well. Standard will probably see some experimentation with some of the other cards in here that they are gonna see if they're gonna go well with whatever strategy they're currently running with. Again, Final Vengeance is a really goddamn good card. The opportunity cost for that thing is so fucking low. I don't know why you wouldn't run it. But otherwise, yeah, I have a lot of high hopes for this set. And I'm going to see how much it will actually shake up the formats that it's going to be legal in, which is pretty much everything. So yeah, we're gonna end it here. And if you guys like what you saw, hit like, comment, subscribe, and share this among your friends. And until next time, surprise jump scare!